Sai, 10 minutes for you.
Sir, the Modi Sarkar has rightly understood that that the task now is to transform India. And in this task, they have understood, realized that the long-standing gap is in infrastructure. And so he has chosen two very competent foot soldiers, Mr. Nitin Gadkari for the surface transport and Mr. Prabhu for the railway transport. And in the last two budget, last year's budget as well as this one, Mr. Prabhu has understood that the usual beaten track method of announcing tracks here, tracks there, routes here, routes there, most of them remaining incomplete, that should be abandoned, and he should concentrate on capital deepening and providing the necessary infrastructure. In the beginning, I would like to suggest one thing, even for the railway minister, that rightly as Mr. Praful Patelji mentioned just now, you need a transport coordination authority, multimodal authority. Today, by natural instinct, people prefer to travel short distances by surface transport, buses and all. And very long distances, people would always weigh the value of traveling 2 days on a train or flying. So I think there should be a multimodal transport authority which should allocate the sectors and investments between rail, road and aviation. Most of the objectives in railways require substantial capital deepening in the required direction. In several countries, passenger fares are either higher or almost equal to freight rates. India has one of the lowest ratio of passenger fare to freight rates, about 0.3. Broadly, freight traffic cross-subsidizes passenger fare. This has been one of the main reasons behind railways losing their share of total freight traffic from 89% to 30% over the last 60 years. While this is the state of affairs in earnings, the expenditure budget reveals that human resources takes a major lion's share of the expenditure. 37% is spent on staff wages and salaries, 19% on pension fund, and 21% on fuel. Consequently, very little is left for capital expenses, and the operating ratio also remains high at 92%. Even appropriation to DRF, Depreciation Revenue Fund, remains rather low. Under-provisioning the DRF has resulted in neglect of track renewals and procurement of rolling stock. Despite all these constraints, Shri Prabhu has budgeted a sharp increase in capital investment. This year proposed investment would be roughly double of the average of previous year, standing at 1.21 lakh crores. It may be recalled that soon after assuming office, he had negotiated a LIC loan of 1.5 lakh crores, spread over 5 years. Shri Prabhu has an ambitious plan of commissioning of broad gauge lines of 7 kilometers per day during the current year, going up to 13 kilometers and 19 kilometers in the next years, as compared to 4.3 in the last 5-6 years. The outlay for track electrification also will be augmented by almost 50%. I have a suggestion for the Railway Minister. Investment in infrastructure will necessarily have to be spread over a long period of repayment. All infrastructure investments have long gestation periods, and you cannot depend on domestic savings for meeting that expenditure. Huge pension liabilities of the Indian Railways will necessarily get phased out over the next 30 years due to the replacement by the NPS. And therefore, this will facilitate repayment without tears. I therefore suggest that Shri Prabhu should tap institutional finance sources in overseas markets, which will lend to a sovereign department like Indian Railways for long periods of 30 years and more. This will facilitate a major capital investment in the Indian Railways. At the same time, it's a welcome initiative already announced by the Railway Minister in his budget that he would start a hitherto untapped source of monetization of railway assets. Railways have huge tracts of land available adjacent to the rail network, and these tracts can be leased out to promote horticulture, tree plantation, commercial exploitation of vacant land, and space right in railway buildings. There is one suggestion which I would like venture to give to Mr. Prabhu. Indian Railways is a unique model where the government is both in the business of running the railways and also the manufacture of engine and the coaches and the rolling stock. I feel that the airlines don't build aircraft. The shipping companies don't build ships. I don't know why we should be in both businesses. I feel that we should progressively quit the business of equipping the Indian Railways by disinvesting in the various wagon, engine, and coach factories. And if that happens, I think the whole, the flavor of the type of coaches which we need in the modern days, that will change. If metros can work on rolling stock purchased from private sector, so can the Indian Railways. I would even venture to add that we should privatize all these railway hospitals and railway schools and all, and use those resources for the main task of running the railways. Let us now focus on the business of more efficient railway operations. It is unfortunate that the 2 dedicated freight corridors announced during the UPA rule have not yet become realities. Maximum gross load carried on IR is 5,400 tons. In China, South Africa, Brazil, and Australia, it ranges between 20,000 to 37,000 tons. With the speedy commissioning of the DFCs, we hope to achieve 12,000 tons. It is absurd that it took nearly 5 years in the UPA government, even for the staff to be put in position for the 2 dedicated freight corridors which have yet to see the light of the day. Passenger trains in a huge subcontinent like ours have to be operated at much higher speeds. In fact, train journeys will be welcome only if they cater to overnight travel, not 2 nights and 3 nights. For this, we need to augment rail speeds at least to 150 kilometers per hour. This will be possible only if there are dedicated freight corridors and the passenger track does not get clogged by the freight trains. It's a welcome announcement that Shri Prabhu has announced for 3 more dedicated freight corridors. Coming to passenger amenities, I have one suggestion. The IRCTC can be redesignated as an Indian Railways Amenities Corporation, and the entire gamut of station amenities, ranging from station redevelopment, provisioning of escalators and lifts, for which I've been crusading for quite some time. You don't have coolies, and people have to carry luggage on steps and then, I think you have to provide, you have to use a PPP model for providing escalators in an augmented manner. provisioning of smooth platform services. Most of the platform services are so rough that reaching the train itself is a big arduous task. Battery-operated buggies for transporting the children and elderly across long platforms. Bio-toilets such that platforms conform to Swachh Bharat objectives, and quality catering facilities. All these can be managed by an amenities corporation, and there will be more flexibility, and many of them can be operated in a PPP model without straining good revenues. I'll give one example, sir. You go to Japan in Osaka town, the railway station, below the railway station, there's a huge world of catering houses and various malls and whatnot. So if you think big, you can have such type of redeveloped railway stations in India also.
Sir, please conclude.
I'll come.
The time is over.
Just 1 minute. One suggestion I wanted to give, because in the COPO we were examining the CSR activities. I find that some of the cash-rich corporations of the railways are spending CSR on unrelated activities. I've been straining from time to time on this topic of providing escalators so that the coolie problem can also be resolved. I find it will be more appropriate if these units could be directed to concentrate on railway-related public services like provisioning escalators and battery-operated buggies and the like.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Next is Shri Ram.